Welcome to the Dream Power Show, where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Welcome to the Dream Power Show. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. We bookend this month's show with experts on alternative medicine, Eastern Herbal Medical Practitioner, Dr. Judyth Shamosh, and energetic healer, Dr. T, who has success using angels for healing. We also have tips on how to be a successful conscious parent with expert Kim Keane. And of course, we talk about dreams with dreamer and author John David Latta. We have so much to cover, so let's begin. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a sucker for medical shows on television. Maybe I was falling in love with Richard Chamberlain's Baby Blue Eyes when I was a little kid, or the romantic stories of young doctors in love, or even marveling at the instant diagnoses emergency room doctors make. I got hooked young and have been a fan ever since. But what about the actual medicine preached in these episodes? The hero is usually the doctor who performs radical procedures to save his dying patient's life. But is pumping massive drugs into a body or performing invasive surgery really the best way to treat what ails us? That's a question that my guest, Dr. Judyth Shamosh, posed to herself when she was starting her career as a research scientist. Her dissatisfaction at the limitations of the Western way of looking at health drew her to the concepts of Eastern medicine. She began a practice incorporating Eastern herbal principles and wrote about it in the award-winning book, Physics and Poetry of Eastern Herbal Medicine. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Judyth.
Hey, thank you. Good morning.
Oh, thank you. Judyth, what's wrong with Western medicine?
Western medicine was actually designed to, back in the early 1900s, was designed to make money. So part of the reason that it doesn't work is because of that, but it was designed with not the person in mind, but again, the object was to make money. But it's also the fact that it does not consider the context of the person who is being treated. So if you go in to see a doctor for a headache or for something more seriously wrong with you, and you come out with a diagnosis, every person will be treated by a certain protocol, regardless of who that person is. In Eastern medicine, of course, we don't do that. We treat each person individually. So we take into consideration the context or the person that we're treating, which Western medicine does not. It was designed to be trauma medicine, and at that it excels. Of course, if you're in a car accident, that's the first place you want to go, is to Western medicine. They will stop the bleeding, put the bones back together, basically save your life. And they're wonderful for that. But in terms of healing chronic diseases, they really don't have any experience at that or training at that.
As you were speaking, it brought to mind, when you said, like, what we know as Western medicine started, 100 and some years ago. And before that, we used to call things like people who sold potions and things, snake oil, sellers and things like that. Is there really such a thing as snake oil? And was that missing something when the Western medicine started taking hold?
Well, in terms of snake oil, I assume that there were shysters back then, just as there are now. And so people would sell anything to make a buck. So maybe some of the people who did that kind of thing were actual healers, and they had potions that actually worked for different problems. But in terms of one size fitting all and one potion fitting everybody, there's no such thing. So it's the same reason that there's no such thing as treating the person with the same disease the same way as another person. So it would be, I don't know, I would consider some of the stuff that Western medicine gives people snake oil, but our stuff is completely different and is based on very not rigid, but very artistic principles that we use to to formulate the strategies that then point us to the direction as to what that person needs for that particular ailment.
And in doing that, you actually use a lot of herbs, but you say that you would prescribe them in different ways for different people. Would that be a good way of saying that?
That's correct. And for different ailments, of course. So there are principles and strategies to using herbal medicine in Eastern medicine as opposed to Western herbal medicine, which is quite different. Western herbal medicine tends to be more symptomatically based, and definitely not contextually based, which would be not the systems based that we do in Eastern medicine. So our herbs they're documented because they've been around for thousands of years. So they're documented to the point where we know exactly what an herb will do. Of course, we use them in formulation. We rarely, almost never use herbs, a single herb by itself. So the formulation is designed so that it not only will heal the problem within the person, but will also not create side effects of any kind. For example, we have some very cold herbs, cold energetically herbs that could damage digestion, for example. And I have seen other practitioners, and I don't mean Eastern practitioners, but other practitioners give people very cold herbs to solve one problem, but then of course the other problem, the side effect, is that it then destroys or damages the digestion. So they come to me to get that fixed, and we have ways of doing that. But there are also ways to give very cold natured herbs to a person without damaging their system. And that's why we treat each person individually, because one person can handle that very cold formulation and another person cannot. So that's again where we have to take the context into consideration.
Absolutely.
The whole picture. We have to have the whole picture, not just part of the picture. And the person being treated is part of the picture.
Yes, indeed. So I'm not a scientist, so I will need your expertise about this. But it was my understanding that a lot of what we consider, the modern medicines that we have today actually came from plants and herbs and things like that, but they were synthesized. Is that where it causes the problems?
Well, that's part of the problem, that they are synthesized. They also extract from the herb what they think is the significant factor that's going to help with the healing process. And when you take something apart, you destroy it. So, for example, if we were to dissect a cell, for example, as soon as you take that cell apart, it dies. So herbs have within themselves, as plants, as once live substances, that balancing aspect already inherent in what they are. And when you take a piece out of it, then it destroys the balance, and therefore the healing process is not as good. And of course, you're going to get major side effects. And then when you go to synthesize it again from chemicals, that creates a whole nother problem.
Indeed. Oh, one of the things is, I live out in the country, and one of my favorite things to do is I have one of those apps where you take a picture and identifies what the plant is. And I came to realize that I have quite a few very interesting plants that, to a naked eye look just like worthless weeds, but they actually have a lot of benefits. And one of the ones I have is mugwort. And when I was first studying dream work, it would say, like, what are some things that can help with, remembering dreams? And they would say mugwort. And I'd be like, what's mugwort? What is that? But I have it growing all over my property. And I have made it as a tea and found it very helpful. So, but do you advocate people, looking at, what's around them and figuring that out?
I would definitely encourage people to find out what's in their area, uh, simply because there's so many different remedies that could be used for ailments that might occur in that particular area. For example, where we are, we have a lot of rattlesnakes. So you look around and there's so many things, if you know what you're looking for, so many things that can help with a rattlesnake bite, for example. So, and I have worked with animals, dogs especially, who have bitten by rattlesnakes and use formulations, and it's amazing what you can do with that. But yes, I do encourage people to look around them and learn what's around them, because there's so many different plants available, and also to and encourage them to research the energetics, what's called energetics. I call functional principles, the energetics of that plant in particular.
And isn't it something, the marvel of nature is that if there's a poison around, the antidote for that is also around?
Generally, that's true. I would say yes. That is one of the marvelous qualities of nature. I mean, all that we need is basically here, and
Yeah.
we just have to look for it and be curious enough and interested enough to do that.
Right. But you say, and really started off by saying this, is that you're mostly involved with prevention of illness as opposed to dealing with symptoms of somebody coming in. Is that correct?
Well, actually, well, the clients that have been with me for many years come to me for prevention, yes. However, most clients come to me when they have a problem and they are already either diagnosed or or nobody can figure out what's going on. So it varies. New clients, of course, like I said, are generally coming to me because they don't know what's wrong with them. And the doctors cannot figure it out, or they can't help them because they haven't been diagnosed with a disease yet. Of course, doctors, that's another part. Doctors, they do their best, but they cannot treat unless they have a diagnosed disease, because then they don't know what they're treating. Of course, they're treating the disease and not the person. And we treat both the condition and the person.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really the holistic way of looking at it.
It it's the only way to really look at it, because otherwise you get all these side effects, and down the road, who knows what all kinds of other illnesses from the treatment that you get in Western medicine.
Right. So can you give me an example of someone who came to you with a condition that, they had gone to a doctor and hadn't gotten any results, and then they came to see you and you were able to help them?
Oh, I have a lot of those. I have a lot of those. The more recent one was a gentleman who came to me, a very vital man, came to me, and he had tremendous leg pain. And I think they did, he said, like 10 or 11 MRIs on him, and they could not figure out what his leg pain was all about. So, and it was very severe. It kept him from doing anything. It really ruined his life. He thought he was dying. And he came to me because he thought he had nothing else to lose. He says, I have no place else to go. Where would I go? Western medicine can't help me. So I did the tongue and pulse assessment, which is part of our diagnostic tools, and determined what was going on and gave him a formula. And it took about 5 or 10 minutes, because it was such a severe case. But he said, oh my God, I don't have any pain all of a sudden. And this man lived with pain for what, 3 months, I believe. I mean, severe pain.
And Judyth, how can people find out more about you and your work?
I have a website. It's Judyth Shamosh, SHAMOSH.com. And if you can also purchase my book on the website. And if you do purchase it from my website, I can send you a signed copy.
We've been talking about Eastern herbal medicine with Dr. Judyth Shamosh. We'll be right back with our next guest. I've said this plenty of times. I never get tired of saying it. Dreams can change your life. I've told the story many times of the dream that changed my life, and I'm not going to bore you with it now, but many people can attest to this. Well, I do have a treat for you. We're going to be speaking with a man whose dreams took him from a life of depression and despair to one filled with joy and unconditional love. His name is John David Latta, and he wrote a book about what dreams have meant to him called The Synchronicity of Love, Stories that Heal, Transform, and Awaken. And we're going to talk about them now. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, John.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I'm super happy to be here.
Well, it is my pleasure because I do love to talk about dreams. But John, let me ask you this. Like me, you're someone who didn't really consider yourself a dreamer growing up. So when was it that you realized that you could see the power behind dreams?
Well, I went to my first ever spiritual retreat about 20 years ago, and the gentleman that led the retreat, Dr. William Brew Joy, he went by his middle name Brew, spent a lot of time on dreams, and he gave all of us, including myself, a process for trying to stimulate and remember dreams. And that was go to bed at night, have a journal or pen or recording device next to the side of the bed. And as you're starting to fall asleep, imagine yourself standing on the edge of a huge cliff. You take off all your clothes, you're completely naked, turn your back to the abyss and fall back into the abyss in total trust and ask for a dream. And I did it night after night. And pretty soon I had a dream, a snippet, then a whole dream, and then another dream. And then sometimes 5 dreams a night. If anything, I had to learn how to kind of modulate the flow. And very early on, I didn't really understand the language of dreams, but pretty soon, maybe about a year, the dreams started to make sense. And there was a wide variety of dreams. And I realized I got so much out of my dreams. And I wrote a chapter in my book. I was scribbling it down just a little bit before our call here. And the chapter is called The Spectrum of Dreams. And I wrote down, I think, 15 different kinds of dreams. And they're so multifaceted, they're so rich, they're so beautiful, they're so helpful. It's hard to really know where to begin, but it added a whole richness to my life that I had never known prior to that.
So what was the first dream that was meaningful for you?
I can tell you exactly. So my journey really began, like so many people that go through deep transformation, with pain and suffering. And so my relatively charmed life had fallen apart just practically overnight. I lost all of our money, deeply in debt. I got divorced. They had custody of my 2 kids, and had this terrifying fear of death stalking me, which I don't know where that came from, and didn't know what to do with it. So I'd gone to that first spiritual retreat. At the same time, I had joined group therapy, something I'd never done before. And I quickly became aware I was essentially the only guy in a group of about 10 women and 2 women therapists. And I felt unbelievably vulnerable in that setting. And one of the first dreams I had was all the women in the group, this was the dream, were gathered together and say, hey, tomorrow we're going to be peeling shrimp, but I'm really worried about John. And I overheard it. And I said, well, why is peeling shrimp a problem? I love shrimp. And they said, well, peeling shrimp can be very painful and very messy. And it took me a while to understand the analogy of peeling the shell off the shrimp was exactly the process as I was about to go through. And I was very happy peeling the shells off of other people. I did not want the shells peeled off of me. So that was my first warning of, you are about to enter something that is entirely new and vulnerable for me.
Well, we're going to get into a lot more of that, but I just want to get back a second to the mechanics of it. So when you first started, remembering your dreams, how easy was it for you to actually remember the dreams, to be able to have something to write down?
It started slowly, but I think it became, I remember my first dream, it was like 3 seconds long. And I couldn't make sense of it. It was so short. I was on a raft going through on a raging river in the Amazon. The end. Done. I didn't know what to make of it. But that was the beginning. And then a little bit more, a little bit more. And I'd have to go back and look, but I'm going to say it didn't take more than maybe a month before I was remembering my dreams pretty much in their entirety. I mean, you know how you probably know this. I mean, sometimes they're hard to hang on to. I don't know why that is. Sometimes they're really easy to hang on to. And, but I would say about a month before I started remembering pretty much an entire dream and writing them down.
And then once you have it written down, how do you analyze them, or do you just meditate on them? How
In the
do you?
beginning, I had no idea. I had a bunch of cool images and symbols, and it was craziness. And my very logical mind couldn't make any sense of it. It was like learning Chinese. And in a way, that is an apt analogy, because if you learn Chinese, it's a language of symbols, and dreams are the same way. And so I did have a lot of help in the beginning. Brew had created a dream forum, and he and some incredibly wonderful people at dream interpretation were on there. And so I think probably like a lot of people, I started with help from others. I started playing with dream dictionaries, even though I was being counseled all along that ultimately these are your dreams and you need to figure them out. And so, to be honest, it was especially for somebody that identified as highly rational and logical, it was a difficult process. Because I learned over time that, for me anyway, dreams require an intuitive touch. And I had to kind of develop that intuition over time before I could really understand the language of my dreams.
Okay, so you said that Brew had developed or got you into working with a dream forum. What was it like for you to share your dreams with other people?
Well, the first few dreams I posted, when people replied what they meant, I'm like, how the hell did you get that interpretation? Like, and it was really funny looking back. I was in a process at the very beginning of, you might say, claiming or reclaiming an entirely what some people call feminine side to myself. And the dreams were revealing that. And it's like, but I didn't understand that, but they sure understood it. And so
did you even know you had a feminine side?
No, and I actually was frightened of it too. And luckily, again, I got really lucky. I had some really wise people. Brew in particular kept saying, don't be afraid of it. Allow it in. It's not like one eclipses the other. They'll be in balance with each other. And ultimately, if you allow in this entire realm of what some people might call feminine, you'll be more resourceful than ever before. And so that gave me a lot of peace. It wasn't like I was trading one for the, I'm going to give up my masculine, now I'm going to be feminine. Although it did kind of feel that way for a while. And once I got comfortable with it, I actually really started to embrace it.
Okay, something that we talk a lot about on this show is the power of healing dreams.
Yeah.
And I understand that you had experience with this as well. So can you tell me about the dreams that actually helped you heal, especially the ones that help you deal with pain?
Yeah. So I have a number of healing dreams, and I had two in particular. I had chronic neck pain for 6 years that I attributed to being rear-ended in a car accident. And I was very athletic and active. And over time, boy, that chronic neck pain was just bogging me down. And I came home from work. And by the way, I tried everything. I tried massage and physical therapy and acupuncture and chiropractic, even had surgery where they injected cortisone in the facet joints of my neck, and nothing worked. I tried exercises. I tried standing up my desk, and nothing would work for more than a day or two. And one day I came home from work early, and I laid down in the bed, and I was literally in tears. It hurt so bad. And I remembered saying, why the fuck does my neck hurt so bad? And instantly I'm in a dream. And the dream is a monk with shaved head and a red robe pacing back and forth outside my house. End of dream. Again, this is in the early days, only maybe a year after I'd begun sort of my dream exploration. And so I went on the dream forum and said, this dream seemed to be answering my question, but I don't get it. How in the world does this have anything to do? And I remember Brew jumping in and saying, that dream has everything to do with why your neck hurts. And I'm like, I don't get it. How does this dream of a monk outside my house have anything to do with my neck pain? And he said, I want you to explore the idea that you have a very spiritual side, even a selfless monk side, which prior to that, I had been in complete resistance, 30 years of antagonistic towards anything remotely relating to spirituality or religion, and tried to imagine, metaphorically, letting that monk into your house, so to speak, seeing him as a part of you. And I was like, okay. So I tried, and a few months go by. Now I have another dream. And now Brew himself is coming towards me, and he's going to heal my neck pain with his hands. And in the dream, I'm like, oh my God, thank God, finally. And as he reaches for my neck, an angry old man who lives in my neck says, get the fuck away. End of dream. And so now I'm onto it. And Brew helped me see I'm just one of those people that when I'm highly resistant, carries a lot of resistance in my neck. And I didn't realize the degree to which, and because I'm going through this whole spiritual transformation and entering all things feminine, which for a lot of highly masculine men is terrifying, I had resistance galore in my neck. And 2 years after the first dream, I had the final culminating dream where I had this golden thumbtack. This is in the dream, and I'm sitting in my office, and I go to stick it, a large thumbtack, into the bulletin board behind me, but it feels odd, and I turn around, and standing behind me is this beautiful Asian monk, red robes, shaved head, and I've plunged the tack right into his heart, and he's smiling at me with such love. And I suddenly realized my neck didn't hurt anymore. And it never did. It was gone. And then one other brief one, true story. I had to fly a lot in my old career as CEO of a large company. I had to fly probably 25 times a year, and I had to fly on this particular trip from Seattle to Jacksonville, Florida, with a connection to Dallas, 30-minute meeting, and then fly all the way back the next day. The day before my trip, I threw my back out. And I'm grumbling. I'm mad. I know how this is going to play out. I know how I'm going to suffer sitting on uncomfortable airplane seats for hours and hours. Like, I'm wondering if I'm even going to be able to walk by the end of the trip. And the next morning I wake up, it's like 4 a.m, and my back still hurts. And I drive to the airport. I can barely get out of my car. I have to literally grab my roof of my car and hoist myself and lift my legs out. And as I'm standing in line of security, grumbling and just steeling myself for what's going to be a horrible trip, suddenly there's some aspect of me that is singing and humming the song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. And I knew kind of loosely that sound and vibration could be healing. And I suddenly went, all this grumbling isn't going to be helpful. And so I started humming the song, and it became like this happy mantra. And the nice thing about airplanes and airports, it's noisy, so nobody can hear you humming the song. And I hummed that chorus thousands of times. It was crazy. It felt like a test from the universe. Every single time I sat in the window seat, and the person in the middle seat was impossibly large. Make a long story short, by the end of the trip, my back pain was gone. And so I'm not sure, this is what I'm going to say, dreams are so multifaceted, but by opening to dreams, I also open myself to whatever it is that comes in and says, why don't you sing a happy song instead of grumbling about how you know it's going to be? And so one of the ways dreams has been healing to me is to teach me that I have some bad habits, and it's okay to break out of those bad habits.
Well, John, how can people find out more about you and your book?
Yeah, website is John David Latta. It's Latta. JohnDavidLatta.com is my website. And my book is The Synchronicity of Love, Stories That Heal, Transform, and Awaken. I chose the title because I discovered the more I stay with what feels like the heart center and unconditional love, the more miraculous synchronicity start to unfold in my life. And that's what I was trying to explore.
Wonderful. Well, John, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
Thank you for the invitation, Debbie. I really appreciate it.
We've been talking about dreams with author John David Lauda. We'll be right back with our next guest. Let's take a look at the typical working woman today. She's determined to do it all, and for the most part, she does. She holds a strong position in her business and has seen progress year after year. She maintains a healthy relationship with her spouse and makes special efforts to keep the marriage alive and growing. But try as she might, there's one area where she feels she falls flat, and that's with her kids. Somehow, they always manage to find a way to push all her wrong buttons and turn her into the mother she swore she'd never be. And that smart, confident, resourceful woman finds herself anxious, overwhelmed, disempowered, and miles away from feeling like she's living her dream life. Maybe you've seen yourself in that position. I know I have. When I was raising my kids, I didn't have all the knowledge I have now and made more mistakes than I wish. I even co-wrote a book about it, my main contribution for the most part being, don't do what I did. Fortunately, there are other people who can also help you master mom education, and one of them is here with me. Kim Keane knows all about the frustrations that come with being a mother and has come up with a proven path for moms to let go of overwhelm and break free from their past. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, Kim, let me ask you this. Why is it so easy for our kids to find our triggers and set us off?
Because we show them. we give it to them. We lay it all out there for them to say like, hey, this is the trigger, and they're smart. They know how to take it and run. And so when they see us, the first time they say something, it catches us off guard, and they see that reaction and they're smart. They're like, oh, that's it. And so the next time I need to get what I want, I'm going to tap right back into that. And they do it again and again and again. And we have the same reaction, even though we say, I'm not going to do that again because I know what just happened. But inevitably, it's human nature, it's mom nature, and it just seems to happen without any control.
Oh, yeah. And it's like the cycle goes on and on and
Yes.
on. But there is a way to stop it, isn't there?
There is. There is. And part of it is not taking it so personally. Which I know sounds super easy because it's like a punch to the stomach every time they hit that trigger button. But the other part is recognizing what we actually have control over. So we don't really have as much control over our kids as we seem to think we do because we don't have any way to hit the pause button or the off switch to get them to stop talking or doing the things that they're doing to trigger us. So really tapping into that as well. And that goes kind of hand in hand with not taking things personally, because when you recognize that the only 4 things that are truly within our control is what we think, what we say, what we feel, and what we do, it's all on us. So we have the power to control that. So we can check in and say, is it 100% true that they're trying to hurt my feelings right now? Maybe it is. Okay, if it is, how can I work through that so I'm not taking it personally and understanding what the real root cause is? They're actually trying to meet their own needs, and they're doing it in whatever way, shape, or form they know how to do that, whether it feels nice to us or not. So that's kind of the piece of the puzzle. But then there's also the other piece is recognizing the motive behind why they're pushing the buttons.
And that involves also realizing that they're actually their own individual people too. They're not just, little me.
Yes. And I think that's hard because I know, especially for me, my older daughter, she looks just like me. She sounds just like me. The mannerisms are the same. And so much so that I was talking to the band teacher at school a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, I didn't even need you to tell me whose mom you were. He was like, I immediately knew that you were Lily's mom. He was like, because you look like her, you sound like her, and you act like her. He was like, or maybe it's the other way around. And so when we have, as a mom, we carry our babies, we birth them, we bring them into this world. It feels like they are part of our being, but in fact, they're really their own being. And so having that awareness of that too also factors into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get back to something even maybe a little bit more basic than that. We are our own people, and we bring all of our past history to our children. And that also has an effect on how we treat them and how we react to them, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And so it wasn't until I started on my own healing journey that I had that awareness of the fact that I was carrying all of that stuff from my childhood, my teenage years, not only into motherhood, but into my marriage as well. And so it took the therapist to say there were very few things that came out of therapy that were positive. But one of the things that was she said, Kim, their story is not your story. And when you project your story onto them, you're giving them a story that's not theirs. And I thought, oh, I get it now. So me trying to puppeteer the interactions between my husband and my kids to do everything I could to make sure it wasn't the same relationship I had with my own dad, or micromanaging my relationship with my daughters and me so it wasn't the same relationship I had with my mom, wasn't doing what I thought it was. It wasn't preventing them from misbehaving. It wasn't preventing them from saying unkind things. It wasn't preventing them or me, from breaking that cycle. It was actually perpetuating it. And so when I took a step back and I recognized in all of the ways that I was continuing to perpetuate the things that I swore I didn't want for my children, then that was really where the magic happened, because it released so much pressure from me as a mom, but it also released so much pressure from my kids that they had to be a certain way in order to be loved.
Right. And so that really means that in order to be a good mom, we really have to heal ourselves first.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Because if we don't, we continue carrying all of that with us and we inadvertently dump it on our kids, and then we make it theirs to carry. And they don't even know what they're carrying, and they don't even know why. They have no idea. And so it creates this turmoil and this frustration and this confusion and really this dysfunction that no one signed up for.
Exactly. And I also think that one of the major components in having a healthy relationship with our kids is establishing really true communication where we can effectively express our hopes, our desires, even our needs, like what we would like them to do, but in a way that is empowering and isn't like in a punishing way. Like if they do something wrong, we don't want to yell at them and say, don't do that. We want to use it as a teaching moment to show them, what was wrong with it and why. So how do we do that?
Yeah, I think it's really just about honesty. So, the example that I like to give, there's times where I've completely freaked out on my kids because it was overwhelming with the constant talking, or then, being asked to do something and having to ask 5 times before they've done it. And then, of course, feeling horrible after the fact for screaming when it really wasn't necessary. But just having the conversation, like, I'm so sorry I screamed, but I was really overwhelmed in the moment and it was too much to handle. And next time, instead of screaming, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little break and I'm going to go outside and get some fresh air, and I'll come right back in and then we can try again. And their kids are actually really perceptive and resilient. And so having that open conversation with my girls, they were very quick to take responsibility in the situation too and say, you know what, we should have listened the first time you've asked.
Right. But we are humans, we are,
Yeah.
and we make mistakes. And like you said, we can be, in a bad mood and then just, yell at our kids because that's just the way it that's the way it is.
Mhm.
Immediate follow that immediate quick reaction.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's kind of like we really kind of have to give ourselves timeouts to prevent that, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. And it shows them too um how to do it. So that was the one thing that I really wanted and really took to heart, was that I was actually modeling for my girls how to navigate life. And so that on some level gave me the sense of permission that I didn't have to be perfect for them. I didn't have to convince them that I had life all figured out, because let's be real, I didn't, and I still don't. I'm learning. Life is a journey. And so I wanted them to understand that it is a journey. You're always figuring things out. And if you go through life afraid to figure them out, or if you convince yourself that you know everything, you're going to miss out on a lot in life and you're probably going to be unhappy. So I really wanted to be that role model for them that shows them it's okay not to have it all figured out. When things are overwhelming or frustrating or not going quite the way that you wanted them to, it's okay. And here's some things that you can do to work through that. And so that helped me too, because then I realized that I was actually learning and teaching them at the same time. And there's so much like richness there. That's like such a golden nugget to be able to have and take with you in the day to day.
Yeah, it's nice when it can be like almost a partnership in a sense.
Yes.
You know, you're learning and teaching, and they're learning and teaching you back. in a sense.
Yes. Yes. And I tell my girls all the time, and my husband, like, we're a team. We have to work together. We're not always going to agree. We're not always going to see eye to eye. And that's just like a team that plays a sport. They're not always perfectly in sync with one another. There are disagreements. There are things that don't always go right. There are wins and there are losses. But at the end of the day, they stay united because they have a common goal. And so we really emphasize that a lot, that we're a team, especially when it feels like it's us parents against the kids. Like, we're doing all the work and the kids aren't really chipping in as much as we've asked them to. Just emphasizing that. And they're good. They're aware. They're like, okay, you're calling me out because this is real. And I actually do need to step up because I'm not pulling my weight. So it's good for them to see that, you know, it's a connected unit. And if one person isn't pulling their weight or doing their part, then the unit's not as strong as it could be.
Absolutely. Would you mind doing a little role playing with me?
Sure.
Okay, because this is actually an issue that my husband and I had with our son from a very early age. And that was a simple thing, cleaning up his room. You know, we'd say, you know, would you please clean up your room? Nothing would happen. We'd like you to clean up your room. Nothing would happen. And to the point where the only way it happened was when we yelled, and it didn't feel right at the time, but we really kind of, in fact, felt helpless. Like, what else could we do? So if you were in that situation, how would you handle that?
Yeah. So we set standards for what a clean room looks like, because that's their own personal space. And that was a big struggle with my husband, because he felt like everything should be picked up off the floor. Everything should be in its own space. Bed should be made. Shoes should not be laying around. Dirty clothes should be in the hamper. You know, he had this whole list, this whole ideal vision of what a clean room looked like. But that was not the vision that my girls had for their space. So it was really about coming together and setting standards for what does a clean room look like. So my husband and I have a standard for our room and what clean looks like, and my girls have a standard for clean and what that looks like in the room. So they have to dust every other week, and the deadline is Sunday. It needs to be done by Sunday. If it's not done by Sunday evening, then you've lost device time for the following day until the room is dusted. So your clothes are in the hamper, check, clean. Your shoes are in your closet, check, clean. Is your bed made? Nope. And that doesn't bother you? Fine. So room is dusted, clothes are in the hamper, you know. So it was really looking at what is the standard, what do they want for their own space, and holding them to that standard. And so when it's not done by the timeline, then that's where the consequence comes in, is that they lose device time. The friend can't come over the next day. My 12-year-old has a cell phone, but it isn't on social media or anything like that. So that's not really a consequence because she doesn't value that. But looking at the things that are valued. And so you don't get to do those things until the room is clean to the standard that we've set. So that way there's this common ground of what it should look like and when it should be done. And so then it's on them. And plus too, I feel like no one sees the room except for them. So if you want to live in a pig pen, have at it. And usually my girls, when it gets beyond their standard, they'll actually take the initiative and clean it up themselves.
Well, that is great advice. And I would say, as far as my son goes, there's a happy ending. His room was messy, but now that he's living on his own as an adult, his place is immaculate. Well, Kim, how can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's kimkeane.com. I'm on Instagram. I've just started dabbling in YouTube and TikTok, but I'm also on Facebook. So pretty much all the social media platforms. You can send me a DM or you can shoot me an email through my website.
We've been talking all about parenting with Kim Keane. We'll be right back with our next guest. Often people ask me, Debbie, why do you talk so much about healing on your show? And my answer is simple. We can't live up to our best, highest selves, creating the dream life we all want, if our bodies are not working at their optimal level. One person who knows this well is my guest, a healer known simply as Dr. T. For years, he has treated thousands of his patients with his non-invasive practices, and he has created a unique system called the Total Knowledge Technique that has been used to treat everything from allergies and infections to stress and pain. Let's find out more now. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Dr. T.
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie. It's good to be here.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Well, Dr. T, let's start off with this. You call yourself a human engineer. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't call myself that. That's the name that a client gave me. So I want to make that clear to everybody. A client woke up on the table many years ago and rolled over and said, you're not a chiropractor. You're a human engineer. And I'm like, I like that name. And so that name has stuck, and it defined me quite well because I'm curious. I'm very curious. The first thing I think of, or the last thing I think of when I go to bed is, why didn't that work for that person today? And when I wake up, I'm like, maybe let's try that, and we'll experiment with that and see if we can come up with another way of cracking this code, because everybody's different. That's why there's the best of anyone, acupuncturist, chiropractor, anybody in the healing field, doesn't matter what they're doing, hypnotherapy, no one's the best because we're all different. And so, to have all these tools to crack that code for healing to somebody requires somebody to really dive in and look at every possible avenue that could unlock something for a human being. So, the name stuck with me. It fits me well. It was early on in my practice. I just started school, but I was a massage therapist. I had a lot of advanced massage techniques at the time. I had just started chiropractic, and I was a clinical hypnotherapist at the time. So I was combining all these things with this guy, and he's still a client. I think he's in Thailand now. He's kind of a world traveler, but we still work with him remotely. I still see him about every month or two, and I thank him every time I get him on. The first thing I say is, "Hey, I just want to remind you, I thank you so much for giving me that moniker." So it's stuck all these years.
I love that you said you're curious, because it seems to me that an awful lot of practitioners, I wouldn't call them curious. I would say they look at a person, they'd say, oh, you fit a certain category or a certain niche, and then they go on from there.
It's really important to come from a place of curiosity, because if you already know the answer, you're already influencing the outcome. And that's the same with any medical research, any medical study. This is what I teach in this class, is this idea that when we look at something and we have intention behind it, then we're changing it. So if we come from a space of curiosity, we're coming from a space of not knowing anything.
And I imagine that people who seek you out are people who've tried other doctors and other modalities that haven't worked for them. So can you talk a little about that?
They've tried everything, they've tried everything. I'm the last, I'm the last guy in the poll. I mean, it's just kind of how my practice has always been. And my philosophy has always been, I don't want to see you anyhow. I want you out living your life. I'd like to see you a couple times a year so that we can check in, we can look at nutrition, look at some big things that go on. We don't realize as we move through life, even if we feel well, we're still picking up all this distortion, all this stuff within our subconscious. Look at the world today. Look at if you peek at the news for a second, that has an effect on us, and the stresses in our daily life has effects on us. I want to answer a question before you ask me really quick, because this is kind of along the lines of your question. People ask me all the time, well, how do you know it's angels? How do you know it's angels? I'm like, well, we had a woman on the call 2 nights ago. We had 20 people on the call. We did this huge group healing. And then I said, oh, so does anyone have anything specifically going on that we can look at quickly? And the woman raised her hand. And she says, yeah, I've had 13 years of back pain, debilitating back pain. I've had one back surgery. They're getting ready to fuse my lower lumbar spine. She could hardly move, hardly get out of bed, hardly do anything. She was just miserable. And I'm kind of diverging in different stories. So we spent about a minute on her, had her up and dancing and running around going, I can't believe this, 100%, 100% gone. Now that's how I know it's angels. I don't care what kind of work people are doing. But what I found was something very specific that she picked up when she got in a car accident about 15 years ago. and we were able to completely disintegrate that. The next person says there was 3 Joes on the call, and I thought the one who was having the problem had taken my class. Esther says, "Hey, Tony, Joe's got both of his elbows. He can't move his elbow. He can't use his elbows. There's so much pain. Take a look at him." So I start working on him really quick, and probably 30 seconds in, I said, "Well, Joe, I'm going right to the origin insertions, right where I taught you about where these muscles attach around the elbow, and right into the ligament of the, right where the bones come together, right in the center of the elbow. Okay, let's have you recheck them." And he says, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm doing stretch I haven't been able to do forever." And I said, "Well, I just can't believe you took the class and you didn't do that for yourself." And he says, "Oh, I haven't been in your class. I'm Joe so and so. I've never even seen you before." So I thought I was working on Joe from the class, but it was a different Joe who got 100% healing bilateral elbow pain in a minute. And people say, how do I know it's angels? That's angels. They're smarter than we are. I simply asked them to come in and do the healing because I found pathogens in his origin insertions above and below both of his elbows. I mean, it's kind of funny, I'm like, what? Wait a minute, that's not Joe from the class? I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, I was working, and I've had this happen so many times where I've worked on the wrong leg and say, "Okay, how is that right leg doing? The right knee, well, it was my left knee, but it's completely gone." These are anecdotal but clinical observations that tell me, this must be something higher working through us than what I'm capable of.
Well, you're right, because you did get to me before I was going to ask you, because I was going to ask you about angels, because a lot of people listening to this, hear you talk about angels and they're kind of in disbelief. What were you talking about? If you only had dealings with Western medicine, it certainly makes no sense at all. So go into a little bit. What do you mean by working with angels, and how do they help you in your practice?
Well, this is the idea of quantum mechanics. This is all stuff I teach in my class. We're doing these free calls. You can come on and see what we're doing in these free calls. I don't know how many more we're doing before the class starts, but anyhow, I teach you all about quantum mechanics. It's really about applying quantum mechanics. The act of observation changes the outcome of an experiment. It's Heisenberg's principle. It gets deeper into that, just how light condenses into molecules, atoms become molecules, how intention drives this whole thing we're doing. I mean, we all have had the experience of thinking of someone we care about, haven't seen them in years, and they call, or they magically show up somewhere, or you get a letter from them, or or you need, you put the call out, "Gosh, I just need money," and somebody sends you money that you've long forgot you were owed. I mean, everybody listening has had these experiences, and so that's how the universe works. Now we get into the intricacies of how it works. And once I pass these tools on to you of how you actually access it, you can have direct questions, inquiry with this field. And a lot of people already do this. They already can feel things in their body. There's different methods. Muscle testing is one method that a lot of people use. I don't use that method because it's easily influenced. But once you have that, and you have the knowledge of what goes wrong with them. How did I know? How did I figure out both of his elbows had something similar going on with them? I'm able to access consciousness and ask the questions. And I have the knowledge of, well, what could it possibly be in there on both elbows? That's kind of a weird thing. Did you smash both elbows at the same? No, this all happened out of the blue. But I'm able to access that knowledge using consciousness and then direct the angel, ask the angels to come in and match frequencies. That's all science that's out there. That's all Royal Raymond Rife's work from the 20s, where he figured out certain radio frequencies. If you match a certain pathogen's frequency, it will explode. And so we're modulating these angels, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're working with the archangels, huh?" No, that's for everybody else to work with. They don't listen to me. They got their hands full. I work with the lazy angels who are hanging out on the beach. They got nothing better to do. They're just chilling. They're just waiting for it. They're just waiting for us to ask them for help. And we all have access to them. No one knows how many there are. No one knows who has better access than other people. But we have figured out a method of boosting your ability to have access to that field very rapidly. Within the first hour of this class, people who have never done any healing at all, have no idea about anatomy, are able to have a miracle. And I don't know what else to call it. You have bilateral elbow pain disappear in 30, 40 seconds, 15-year low back pain, debilitating, operated on, getting ready to fused on, gone in a minute and a half. I don't know, I don't like the word because it's a little too far out there, but these are miracles. We see them every single day. I have them every single day that I practice. I'll have them today. I've already looked and see. I see who's coming, And, we're going to have 4 or 5 today. I mean, this is just, we kind of yawn with the miracles. I mean, this is just how it is. And this is how it should be. And so, this is just, it's a new model of looking at the body, the mind, body, spirit, and using angels to make big changes, very big changes in the body.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't know much about angels, and like I've heard of Archangel Michael. A lot of people I know, deal with him and things. But how did you come across angels and realize that they could be a help to healing?
It's a very long story. I'll make it really short. A woman comes in. She was supposed to bring her son in. Her son got killed on the way home from work. Got ran over by an ambulance, broadsided by an ambulance through a stoplight. He's dead. He goes home and wakes her up. She was very, very psychic, very tuned in woman. And he goes home and wakes her up and says, "Sorry, Mom, I'm not coming home." I mean, it just brought tears to my eyes. I mean, she walked into my office that morning at 10 o'clock in the morning alone. I was like, where's your son? And she said, "Yeah, he was killed this morning, 5 o'clock this morning on his way home." And I said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." She says, "Yeah, he came home and woke me up and told me that, sorry, Mom, I'm not coming home." I was just like, "Oh my God, I can't really believe this." She says, "Yeah, well, he's still with me." I said, "That's amazing." She says, "Yeah, no, he tells me that you don't believe me." I said, "Oh, I believe you. I just have never met anybody before that's talking to a dead person." And she says, "Well, he tells me the only way you're going to believe me is if I tell you you have a shotgun wrapped up in a camouflage jacket buried in your basement." And I said, "Oh, what does he want me to know?" I mean, he picked the one thing. He picked the one thing that nobody knew about. Only I knew about that. I mean, we had just moved into this house. That was the only thing that he could have chose that had, what does he want me to know? And he proceeded to tell me my whole life story. I've had a couple of angelic we call them coincidence. Oh, that was a great coincidence that I didn't, get smacked by that semi. Oh, it was great that motorcycle, I didn't, if I had fallen a different way, I would have broken my neck. Or, we've all had these things we just brush off because we can't see them. But everybody here listening has had an angelic experience. And when you all think over your lives, you all have had that somewhere, sometime, somebody gave you some advice or something happened that an angel saved you. Anyhow, so he tells me all this life story of mine. And then at the very end, she says, and he tells me they're flying around this house. That's why they brought you here. I lived in Los Angeles. I had 40 acres behind my house. It was preserved. It wasn't a park. It was a preserve. So no one was out there. He said they brought me here so that I could learn how to use them, and the energy from people is going to be going out into this 40 acres off up into the mountains, and you're going to be doing this remotely all over the planet. He told me all this stuff, and I'm just like, I'm in school. I mean, I got bills. I'm like trying to build my practice. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't hardly believe this. And she turned and left, and I tried. I was like, oh, let me try this angel stuff, and tried. Pretty soon I forgot all about it because it wasn't working. I wasn't able to do anything with them. And a few years later, a woman came in with a book that had this couple paragraphs about angels, and at the very end of it, it had this whole process you go through to call them in. It was sitting in a corner and lighting incense and sage and do this and then all these things. And she said, "I want you to do that." I said, "I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. I don't have time to do that." And it just doesn't work for me. She said, "Well, do something like that." And so I did the best I could, like what this book described. I don't remember the name of the book for the life of me. It was an older book, but I did I did kind of I had learned a lot of intentional based techniques. Really, all techniques are intentional based. They just look like we're touching and lightly touching and doing things, but these light touches are full of intention. And the more I figured that out, I think practicing that for a number of years before I tried to access the angels is what I needed to do. And so, anyhow, long story short, with this woman, this was about 8 or 9 years ago, I did what I felt I should do with the angels, and we had a miracle.
How can people find out more about you and your work?
Come to it's ahumanengineer.com. A is an Adam, human, common spelling, engineer, common spelling.com. And if you don't want to get, if you're sick, get on the program. It's called Crazy Unknown Shift. If you want to learn how to do this work, check out TNT. It's absolutely amazing. But if you're just curious, we do these free live calls.
We've been speaking with Dr. T about healing. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If you have, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.